If you're an anime fan, you've probably been through the inevitable disappointment that is seeing a series you love get a poor adaptation. You've probably implored fans of the anime to read the original. You've probably inexplicably gotten more annoyed at the people who thought the adaptation was good than those who thought it was bad, because you know they'll likely never feel the need to go back to the source material and see how much better it could have been. So what does make a good adaptation? Easy, an understanding of what makes the original work, or is it the full utilization of a new medium? But then, what if it doesn't cover the full story or even changes the ending? Maybe there isn't a definitive answer to that question, but with its roughly 50,000 alternatives to the original sound novel, Higurashi no Naku Koro ni, or Higurashi When They Cry, is a great place to start probing. It's hard to say whether I like the Higurashi anime for the reasons stated above. What I can say is that there are a great deal of Higurashi adaptations I like more. Rather than labelling it the worst, I want to talk about its successes and failings and how I feel its competitors match up. To address the elephant in the room, Higurashi is long. Like really, really long. Not everyone wants to read a 100-hour novel. Not everyone has the time. I get that. The anime's first 2 seasons are 17 hours long. A considerable improvement, if not one without repercussions. Note, I do not judge adaptations on the amount of material gone so much as the choices on what to cut. This is where the Higurashi anime, a seemingly solid series to a first-time watcher, starts to go wrong for those who know its origins. Take the scene on screen. There's no evident issue here for an anime-only watcher. Those who've read the sound novel, however, will know that this scene is actually meant to be with Mion, not Shion. They replace one with the other here because they then skip a whole day forwards to a scene that is with Shion. So it's just easier if they give her sister's dialogue for continuity purposes, seeing as they look the same anyway, right? Great time-saving technique, right? It's not like she's a totally different character or anything. I know saving time in an anime adaptation is something of an extreme sport, but come on. Even harder to understand is the omission of really important details, like the fact that the twins switched identities halfway through their childhoods. Yes, this is never mentioned in the entire anime. I could go on. This shoddy exercise in compression shows a glaring misunderstanding of how these characters have been shaped by their experiences and why they act the way they do, a key element of the series. That's my argument, that the Higurashi anime is not bad as a standalone piece, but that it also isn't remotely representative of the original. And while it's true the anime does a decent job of pushing the series' overarching message of friendship, some of the more nuanced themes also seem to have been equally misconstrued. If you look at how Kishi 07 seeks to portray violence, there's a subtle tact. It's often indirect, making use of cutaways and memory blackouts to save us from the details. When we do see the events of these scenes play out, the focus is on how the characters involved are feeling and what they're thinking. It's why the few moments where we actually hear the unobscured reality of what's happening are so visceral. Nothing illustrates Studio Dean's mishandling of this better than the very first scene in the series. The sound novel starts with the iconic monologue, Keiichi musing over his feelings for Mion and more so Rena, ending on that gut punch of a line. Perhaps I really did love you. You know what's going on through vague references to Keiichi going through the motions, but it's background noise to his stream of consciousness. In the novels, this scene begs the question, what has happened to lead Keiichi here, as he cries over the death of the person he's killing? It's powerful, compelling because of the dichotomy, and somehow already poignant before we've even met these characters. We immediately know Keiichi is no simple antagonist. Then there's the opening to the anime. Yeah, That's the issue here, not what the Higurashi anime did or didn't show with regards to the violence, but how it was framed. This whole show was marketed around its horror, and that is, I am sad to say, exactly why it was as successful as it was. There are so many people who admit to either hating Kai or never having watched it, because where was all the blood and death from the first season? As though the true enjoyment of the series was not meant to be in seeing these characters overcome their inner struggles, but watching them suffer. Higurashi's anime made great numbers, but when anime exists to advertise their source material, can we really praise an adaptation that strayed so far from the messages of the original? So if understanding of the source is a necessary component of a good adaptation, Higurashi pretty clearly fails. What about utilization of the medium? With the jump from novel to animation, there should have been plenty of opportunity here to present the story in a completely new and engaging way. In theory. Nobody is out here recommending the Higurashi anime because it looks good, it doesn't. Sorry, but while my 10-year-old eyes were more forgiving, it would be hard to even get anyone to watch Higurashi now under the harsh light of the anime industry's current standards. And yes, Kai was better, but you had to get past 26 episodes of slowly declining quality before it. Similarly, moments of visual metaphor or insightful character animation come like flashes of light through the clouds. Brief, uncommon, and all too evident because of it. Higurashi is a series with layer upon layer of meaning, foreshadowing, and particularly parallels. It should have been a dream to direct. There was so much potential for the story to be brought to life in a whole new way on screen, and it really just wasn't. I want to be clear that this isn't an attack on the staff at Studio Dean. Anime production does not exist in a vacuum, and I have no doubt they were under all kinds of constraints that prevented them from realising even their own visions for the work. But even while lacking superficial appeal, an anime can still be great with the right people handling the material. Studio Dean provided neither. My last major bone to pick is with the soundtrack. While not necessarily bad in its own right, it is deeply underwhelming compared to the original, laden with somber, heavy pieces carrying a sense of dread or fear rather than the variety of the sound novels. Worse is the sound direction, where the music chosen for key scenes differs drastically in tone to the original. If nothing else, the Higurashi anime really taught me how completely the music alone can change the mood of a scene.
Koi Rena! 夢とか幻とかじゃない。ましてや手遅れでも何でもない。レナにはまだ選べる選択肢が残ってるんだ。だから選べ。間に合う。来るんだ。俺たちはやり直せるんだ。だから選べ。間に合う。来るんだ。
I am trying to be fair here, and there is one major asset to this adaptation I would be remiss not to mention. the cast. The Higurashi cast are our blessing as fans. They seem to have been handpicked from some of Japan's most prolific and loved voice actors of the 90s and 2000s, and there isn't one of them who doesn't nail their role. They are abundantly talented, and they bring the characters to life in what is an entirely character-driven series. I have to say that, if anything, this makes it sadder when you hear how constrained they are in this version of the series. But the fact remains that they did everything they could with what they were given, and by extension elevated many scenes that could have been otherwise mediocre. The level of iconic some of these soundbites have become attests to it. Even so, with the sound novel also now available fully voiced with the same cast, this is more a bonus than a unique draw. To round it off, the anime has some nice bonus content too. It is also, of course, readily and easily available in English, though I wouldn't recommend the dub either. So it's not as simple as saying the Higurashi anime is the worst version of the story. You might disagree, all my points withstanding, but its many contenders do provide at the least solid alternatives. Some, like the stage play, I know nothing about. Others, like the light novels, I can't talk about at length. They're unavailable in English and probably identical to the sound novel in content anyway. Still, I had to slip these stunning illustrations in somewhere. I once saw someone muse over what the anime might have looked like in this art style. Once, I contented myself with the idea that Studio Dean's Higurashi was the best it ever could have been. Seeing work like this, I can no longer agree. I have 4 main adaptations I want to rank comparatively, starting at the bottom of the list with the 2016 TV drama. Adapting the first 3 arcs into one series and the 5th and 6th into a second, the drama is tricky, and I'm not about to definitively recommend it over the anime. The core issue here is a familiar one: the budget. The drama toes a fine line with its cosplay-like styling, creepy contact lenses, and cheap visual effects. It could almost work if the source material weren't quite so serious. This skimping stands out even more painfully than in the anime. Otherwise, the entire female cast is comprised of young members of idol group NGT48. This can be a double-edged sword, with the characters at their most youthful, but the acting also at its most stiff, though with a few exceptions. Reina Seiji is a very solid Satoko. Most of all, it's probably no stretch to say Yu Inaba saves this adaptation in his role as Keiichi. I would go so far as to say he may be my favourite portrayal of the character we've seen. Boyish and awkward, deeply caring and emotional, he gets some of the punchiest scenes in the series spot on. And while some are better than others, it is evident each and every member of the cast did their best with the roles and genuinely tried to engage with the material. The performances have a kind of rough charm to them that makes evident the cast are treasuring the experience, and there are equally plenty of the heartwarming character moments that make this series so special. I smiled a ton watching it. This adaptation is rough around the edges to be sure, and people may be tempted to turn their noses up at it, but surprisingly, when it comes to the hardest hitting moments, it often far surpasses the anime. Each arc gets 2-hour-long episodes, making for an actual comprehensive representation of the source material, giving it sufficient time to breathe. If anything, this version of the story can feel a bit exposition-heavy and slow, with its many sit-down conversations between characters, but no more so than the original. There's even some music from the sound novels in there, a welcome touch I'd love to see in more adaptations going forwards. 3 arcs may be missing, and the presentation may be questionable at times, but there's plenty of heart to this series, and it's even been subbed by fans. All told, I have a well-earned soft spot for this one. The Higurashi live-action movies. They may not be the objective best adaptations, but I'll happily come out and say these are my personal favourites. Covering Onikakushi and Sumihoroboshi, these are the antithesis to the TV drama, predating them by almost a decade, dropping the kitsch presentation and embracing the new medium. The movies create a fully realised alternative experience, and in the process show what the anime could have been. This director, Ataru Oikawa, simply got it, and this is the adaptation that for me most closely replicates the feeling of reading the original. Every second is savoured as another opportunity to draw us deeper into this world. The gaze of the camera is expertly used, capturing every subtle bit of body language or fleeting facial expression in scene after truly intimate scene. These do as much to expose the characters' relationships with themselves and one another as every carefully chosen line. There is none of the checklist approach to pacing from the anime here, where we see scene after scene from the sound novels crammed in whichever way they'll fit. There isn't even the more breathable but similarly stiff and formulaic pacing of the TV dramas. If I were to take a guess at how planning for these movies went, the director actually took the time to sit down with Yukishi and ask him, what's important? Forget the volume of content, what can we do to give a quality version of the story without compromising the cinematic narrative? There's a clear focus here on making good movies and repurposing the content to do so, rather than simply copying and pasting the original. And the handling in order to achieve this is masterful. There are new scenes and details added, even key plot points changed. But these movies still manage to feel, to me, like the truest actual representation of the series, because they ultimately convey the same emotions. We finally get some of that wonderful foreshadowing and implicit meaning Higurashi is so great at. The visual horror is actually handled properly. The choice to depict it directly is made in tandem with the choice to focus on the emotional experience of the characters, as in the original, as compared to the gore of the anime portrayed with the intention of inciting shock and disgust. The movie's approach makes for scenes of true horror, that of the characters at their own actions and the overwhelming mental anguish they are experiencing. The first movie does an incredible job of capturing Keiichi's descent into madness, with disorienting sound direction and an increasingly misleading timeline where dream and reality merge into one. When at their best, these movies are absolutely beautiful, carried by some seriously impressive acting for a cast of teenagers. Airi Matsumaya steals the show, demonstrating an incredible grasp on the multiple layers to Rena's character. There is none of the awkwardness of the TV drama acting here. The movies carry a distinctly mature tone that feels just right. Even the score is understated, somewhere between the anime's somber and the sound novel's slowly building triumph, soaring into centre stage to carry only the most powerful moments. There's a tactful sparsity to this adaptation that the anime desperately lacks. The supreme understanding of the material and utilisation of the medium meld to stunning effect, and both movies are available with English subtitles too. About the only reason they're this far down the list is that they only actually cover 2 arcs, even if they do a spectacular job of introducing the world to fans and newcomers alike in the process. The second spot on this list goes to the drama CDs, the first alternative to present another complete version of the story. The drama CDs aren't that well known, but were actually the cast's first experience with the series. The first disc came out in 2005, the year before the first season of the anime aired. It would take a further 3 years before they were complete, and the cast would go on to voice the entire sound novel too. I can't begin to fathom how many hundreds of hours of their lives the main Higurashi cast have dedicated to this series over the last 15 years, and this has inevitably produced an unparalleled understanding of their respective characters. It's interesting then hearing their very first outing with the series, as they settle into the nuances of how they want to act these roles. It's no wonder the acting can make or break a series like Higurashi that relies so heavily on its characters to resonate. But it takes a certain kind of talent to achieve this in an adaptation with literally nothing but sound to convey meaning. The equal weight and freedom of this fresh opportunity shows, and this is without a doubt home to the best performances in the series across the board. If the acting is great in the anime and excellent in the sound novels, it is absolute mastery of the form here. Perhaps due to the fact that they were themselves discovering the material for the first time as they acted, the performances here are simply different, the emotion more raw and unrestrained. It should come as no surprise to hear the gold star goes this time to Satsuki Yukino. Her performances as both Mion and Shion shine even amongst a cast of only the best. To enhance the experience, or else rub salt in the wound, whichever way you want to look at it, the soundtrack for this version of the series is entirely composed by the original's very own Dai, who produced some beautiful rearrangements of already iconic tracks. I wasn't sure whether to actually include any clips here because when at their best these CDs can be genuinely distressing to listen to. But I also think any Higurashi fan owes it to themselves to hear this, so turn your volume down and I'm sorry.
私をどうするつもりなんですの？
殺す。
やめておね！里子を殺さないで！
今頃罪が分かったかい？あんたはそれをサトシ君の時にしなかった。だからサトシ君は虫けらのように殺されてしまったんだ。あんたはサトシ君を救える100億の瞬間を見捨てた、見殺した。そうさ、それがあんたの罪なのさ。まだ殺しやしないよ。ナイフを右腕に刺しただけさ。まあいつまで持つかわからないけどね。をどうしてサトシ君の時に言えなかったんだ。もう遅い。遅すぎるんだよ。そうさ、今叫んでいるお前はあの時の私。どんなに叫んだって届かない、救えない、助けられない。お前はそこで救えない苦しみを味わうがいい。よしよ。じゃあこうしよう。あんたはこれから1000回ごめんなさいって言うんだよ。言い終わったらサトコを解放する。どう？ごめんなさい、ごめんなさい、ごめんなさい、ごめんなさい、ごめんなさい、ごめんなさい、ごめんなさい、ごめんなさい、ごめんなさい、ごめんなさい、ごめんなさい、ごめんなさい、ごめんなさい、ごめんなさい、ごめんなさい、ごめんなさい、ごめんなさい、ごめんなさい、ごめんなさい、ごめんなさい、ごめんなさい、ごめんなさい、ごめんなさい、ごめんなさい、ごめんなさい、ごめんなさい、ごめんなさい、ごめんなさい、ごめんなさい、ごめんなさい、ごめんなさい、ごめんなさい、ごめんなさい、ごめんなさい、ごめんなさい、ごめんなさい、ごめんなさい、ごめんなさい、ごめんなさい、ごめんなさい、ごめんなさい、ごめんなさい、ごめんなさい、ごめんなさい、ごめんなさい、ごめんなさい、ごめんなさい、ごめんなさい、ごめんなさい、ごめんなさい、ごめんなさい、ごめんなさい、ごめんなさい、ごめんなさい、ごめんなさい、ごめんなさい、ごめんなさい、ごめんなさい、ごめんなさい、ごめんなさい、ごめん 泣くのはあんたの1000倍特許だね。泣けばニーニーが来てくれる。ニーニーがかけてきて私を跳ね飛ばしてあんたを助けてくれるのかな。
This adaptation could very easily take the top spot, but while it shows an understanding of the series beyond compare and utilization of the medium, as well as presenting a complete version of the story, it lacks easy availability and accessibility. You can't even get your hands on some of these discs anymore unless you're willing to sell your organs on the black market to fund it. I've bought the copies I do have from a Japanese auction site, and they're, in Japanese. You can essentially follow along with the original novel, but I'm not deluded enough to think most people would actually bother to do that even if I handed them out for free. For now, it remains the genuinely saddening truth that most people will never own or hear these CDs, but the list isn't done yet. So far, this list can be summed up with the can't have all three triangle, namely quality, accessibility, and completion of the story, regardless of which you place most importance in. If there were a single version that had all three, I think it would only be right for it to take the top spot on this list. And there is. Probably surprising to nobody who's read it, the Higurashi manga is, in my opinion, the objective best adaptation. A complete version of the story, fully legally available in English, that does a far better job with the source material than the anime. Firstly, yes, hallelujah, it covers the whole story, and has some fantastic bonus content to boot. As is the case with most of the adaptations, the initial arcs start out shorter, with 2 volumes of manga for each of the first 4, then get considerably longer as you approach the end. In total, there are 138 chapters spanning the core 8 arcs. If we assume it takes a conservative 10 minutes to read a chapter of manga, that already makes it 25% longer than the anime. That 25% counts for a lot, especially when you factor in how much more information you can cram into a single page of manga textually that would take considerably longer to be read aloud. And then there's the chance for more natural inclusion of inner dialogue too. Maybe because of this, maybe because Ryukishi had more involvement, maybe because of the time and resources that went into it, or maybe simply because those involved had a better understanding of the material, The manga feels like a true adaptation. It sticks to the original and the impressions it conveys of the characters, their relationships, the morals and the messages of the story, but it doesn't feel stagnant. Yes, the manga is another great example of making the most of the transfer to another medium. The Higurashi manga made the unique and brilliant decision to use a total of 5 different artists for the 8 core arcs. Not only did this allow for a variety of talent to be put on full display throughout the adaptation, it also kept the reading experience fresh, accentuating the sense of excitement and intrigue that came with each new arc. It really genuinely added to that feeling of each arc being a literal new world and the uncertainty that brought. Each artist did a great job bringing unique flourish to each aberration of the story. I do think Karin Suzuragi's work on the first arc is the most unremarkable, making for a slightly poor first impression. Yutori Hojo, however, immediately ups the standard come Watanagashi, jumping seamlessly from spreads that could contend with the best shoujo manga to shit that gave me nightmares as a child. Jiro Suzuki similarly excels with Tatarigoroshi, perfectly capturing the shift to even heavier and more mature content with some incredibly intense panels and spreads. Yoshiki Tonogai's style is a great fit for Himatsubushi's story of Akasaka meeting a young Rekka, as well as the shift from the heartwarming, fun early moments in the story to the more chilling later content. Yutori Hojo is back for Miyakashi in an adaptation of the arc that I have only the highest praise for. Her deep understanding of Shion's character is evident. Her pain overflows off of page after beautiful, tragic page. This is a version of the story that feels like a worthy counterpart to the original, one that completely captures the experience of reading the arc, even with far fewer words. This is, after all, manga, and the art says everything here. Karin Suzuragi improves on her first effort with the series in spades in Sumi Horoboshi, and far surpasses the anime's version of the arc in the process, managing to fit in the many key scenes and details missed out in that version. The last few chapters of this arc, my favourite sequence in the series, are just thrilling. Hinase Momoyama keeps up the standard with a breathtaking adaptation of Minna Goroshi, where all pretense falls away and the real horror of the series is laid utterly bare. This arc contains many an unforgettable scene, and Momoyama illustrates each and every one with heart-wrenching emotion. Finally, Karin Suzuragi delivers a deeply satisfying finish to the story with Matsuribayashi, particularly nailing one of my favourite segments, the series of flashbacks detailing everything that happened in the characters' lives leading up to June 1983, and equally providing a far more emotionally evocative end than the anime managed. You've probably gathered this by now, but this adaptation is absolutely beautiful. There are countless pages throughout the manga that genuinely knocked the air out of me. The manga is probably the most uncontroversial adaptation of Higurashi. I've even seen people readily recommend it as an alternative to the sound novels, and I agree. If there's no way you're going to get through the games, this is a version of the story I can confidently recommend to give another brilliant experience of it. It does the original enough justice that I would feel comfortable discussing Higurashi with someone who had only read the manga, knowing they had experienced the same story as me, which really isn't easy to say about the anime with the sheer amount of content cut. There isn't a character, relationship, or theme that I don't feel the manga does justice. About the only downsides are the slightly too short first arc, the lack of music and voice acting, and the length. It is, however, only a quarter of the length of the sound novels, a huge improvement for those pressed for time, and an extremely impressive fact to consider when you look at just how well it did at representing the material in that amount of time. Some say Higurashi is in need of a good edit anyway. I personally feel a slightly rambling, unrefined writing style is one of Rikishi's trademarks. This adaptation does more or less cut out any inconsequential scenes of the club messing around together, which undoubtedly make up the bulk of that saved time. This is the difference between this version and the anime, which it can be argued valued the volume of those scenes over those that were plot relevant. And yet you don't really get the feeling that you spent less time with these characters getting to know and love them, because while there's far less of the club playing card games, there's far more of them speaking candidly to one another about their innermost thoughts and fears. Now, in the end, it is only the original that can fully deliver on each and every one of the things I've mentioned as defining the series here, and this is by no means an encouragement to pick up a different version instead. That aside, in conclusion, I simply think the Higurashi anime set the bar too low for itself. Each and every other adaptation I've discussed show a greater confidence in what they're trying to achieve and a solid effort to fulfill that. They show a dedication to capturing the brilliance and power of the source material. All of it, not only the most overt themes. They also do this in new, exciting ways the original novels could not. Arguably the entire point of bringing a story to a new medium. And sure, the anime works, but what I hope I've proven is that there is so much more to an adaptation than just that. Most of all, I feel deeply, incredibly fortunate that the love so many fans have for this series, not least of all myself, has been recognised and reciprocated through what is a truly wonderful and diverse range of adaptations, all produced with immense hard work, respect and care. The anime remains as many's starting point, and I don't begrudge that. But there are certainly a wealth of worthwhile ways to experience the series beyond it.